Hey, since when did Dragon Ball games exist on a DS? What? You didn't know? Since forever. What? Prove it. Well, I am playing Attack of the Saiyans right now, but you know what? I've never actually looked into the Dragon Ball Handheld games, so I guess this is a perfect time to look into them. But how will you look at those games if you don't have them? The same way I talked about the PS2 and PS3 Dragon Ball games I didn't have. Fair enough. By the way, please support the people I credit. Anyways, let's look at the history together.
So it seems that Dragon Ball games have been coming out in handhelds since the Game Boy days. And I mean the Game Boy, not the Game Boy Advance or anything like that. These types of games have been getting released up until now, where you can argue that phones count.
But phones are phones. Fine, then does the Switch count? Kind of, I guess. Well then till that.
I will be going through everything from the Game Boy all the way to the Game Boy Advance for now, because there are so many handheld Dragon Ball games.
Wow, I didn't expect there to be a lot. I guess I'm gonna be here for a while.
The first Dragon Ball Handheld game came out for the Game Boy, and it's called Dragon Ball Z, Goku Hishouden. It came out in Japan on November 25th, 1994, and nowhere else. The game's translated title is Dragon Ball Z, Goku's Soaring Legend. It's an RPG game that you probably wouldn't recognize as an RPG. RPGs sure have come a long way, haven't they? The pixel art doesn't look bad at all, and it seems like a pretty simple game. The music is as expected from a Game Boy game and isn't very noteworthy. The game starts from the end of Dragon Ball with the 23rd Budokai Tenkaichi and ends with the fight against Vegeta in the Saiyan Saga.
But that's pretty much Goku Hishouden. Not a bad start. I wonder what came out next.
The next game is the sequel to Goku Hishouden, and it's called Dragon Ball Z Goku Gekitouden. It came out a year after Goku Hishouden and has a little more to it than the first game. It's still an RPG, but looks a little more visually pleasing. This game goes through the Frieza saga, and that's really about it. Still a Japanese exclusive game, but better than the last game.
And with that, we can move on to the Game Boy Color, right? Absolutely. I don't know why I used that word.
The first game for the Game Boy Color was not a sequel to the Goku series. In fact, there was never a game in that series after Gekitouden. The next game didn't even come out for the Game Boy Color timeline-wise, but we'll soon get to that. The only Dragon Ball game that came out for the Game Boy Color is a game called Dragon Ball Z Legendary Super Warriors. It came out worldwide in 2002, so this is the first worldwide Dragon Ball handheld game.
It will make sense in a second. I was about to say.
This game is a card game turn-based RPG that kind of but doesn't really play like Paper Mario Sticker Star. I know there was a lot wrong in that sentence. It has a pretty interesting quick time event to execute your attack, which is pretty rare to see, but it is pretty slow gameplay wise. But what was I really expecting from a Game Boy RPG? The OST is okay, and the story goes through all of Dragon Ball Z. There's also some modes like multiplayer and battle mode. I don't really know how they play since I'm just looking through the Dragon Ball wiki for this info. But that's pretty much this game.
Why are you going so fast? We already went through 2 consoles. Well, it's mainly because I didn't play these games, but I did want to show some appreciation to them. I just know I won't play all of them. I guess that's fair. Well, on to the Game Boy Advance games.
The first game to come out for GBA is a favorite among many Dragon Ball fans. It's the one and only Legacy of Goku. This game first came out on May 14, 2002 and was only released in North America and Europe. It seems like a pretty unique Dragon Ball game, as it is more of an action RPG. So this predates Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. For a Game Boy game, the world looks pretty immersive. It kind of looks like a Pokemon world if it were an action RPG. The music is alright, and the gameplay is also alright looking. And the story goes through the Saiyan Saga through the Frieza Saga. Wow, no wonder it's pretty beloved. The next game to come out is a game called Dragon Ball Z Collectible Card Game. It came out not long after Legacy of Goku, as it came out on May 29, 2002. It seems like it only came out for the US, but I'm not 100% sure about that. There isn't really much to say about this game. It's a pretty mediocre card game that doesn't really have much going on for it.
I'm sorry, I'm just not very into card games. Me neither, so let's just move on.
So the next game was Legacy of Goku 2. Back to some good looking games. It came out in the same places as the first game did in 2003, and I still don't know why there is no Japanese release for it. Actually, there was another version for this game just for Japan. For the most part, this is pretty much the last game with some improvements here and there. The story goes over the Cell Saga, with it starting in future Trunks' timeline. I really can't say much about the game other than the fact that there is more added in this game and it's pretty immersive. The OST is pretty cool too.
Are you doing that thing where you don't want to explain stuff so you just quickly go through it? Maybe. Hey look, the next game is pretty different. Wait, what the heck is this? Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu? Well, the box art looks pretty cool.
So it came out for the US and Europe in 2003, a bit after Legacy of Goku. Wait, this is a fighting game? Oh no, this is the worst looking game I've seen so far!
What? Let me see. Oh.
The game may look bad, but this game doesn't seem like it plays bad. It may not be the best fighting game and it does look pretty clunky, but it seems bearable. But then again, 1, I haven't played the game, and 2, this is on the Game Boy Advance of all things. OST is really just whatever. There is no story or anything like that, so I guess this is a game more to just get right into it. The characters are mainly the End of Z characters with a couple of exceptions, but overall, a pretty meh game.
Why do some of these games not come out for Japan? I don't know, but if you remember early on, Japan did have exclusives, but this game seems like it came out worldwide. Finally.
This next game is Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors. As I said, it came out in your typical regions in 2004. This is another fighting game and it looks a lot better than the last game. In fact, this one just seems a lot more complete than the other game.
I wonder who made it. Wait, Arc System? What?
So, this was Arc's first Dragon Ball game. For what it is, it looks pretty fast paced. This game reminds me of Super Budokai since it's a 2D fighter that you fight both in the air and on the ground. Honestly, it looks like a lot of fun. The OST is alright, but the sprite work is a lot better than Taiketsu. Even just looking at gameplay, I forget that this is supposed to be a Game Boy game. It's pretty solid and has a good amount of modes included, so I would say this game is worth getting. I also would love to get my hands on it one day.
Well, that was a pretty solid one. Looks like the momentum is back up. Well, there's still 3 games we have to go over, but I hope you're right this time. So this next game is Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury. That's random. Why Boo? Well, let me finish, then you'll know. This is technically Legacy of Goku 3 since it's part of that series. Oh, that would make sense.
Anyways, for whatever reason, the wiki only gives me the date that this game came out in the US, which is September 2004. Europe is completely gone. For the most part, this is pretty much a continuation of the last game. Nothing really was changed and there were some additions to it. Music doesn't feel any different from the last game. So overall, the game is just a Buu Saga version of the previous game.
So in other words, it's a pretty solid game. Yeah, can't disagree with what I'm hearing.
Next up is Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. It came out in 2004 in Japan and in 2005 for the rest of the world. Now I don't know about you, but this game looks kind of cool. It looks more like a GBA game than any of the other games so far. It's a 2D beat 'em up made by Dimps. The gameplay is pretty cool. It has different modes too where you can also play one-on-one fights. It even has a one-on-one multiplayer. A beat 'em up with a 1v1 multiplayer. Huh. The story goes over Dragon Ball without the Demon King Piccolo arc. Music is cool, graphics are pretty nice looking, and overall a good looking game.
I don't actually know if it really is a good game, so maybe one day I'll try to get this game. You should tell me how it goes. How long do you plan to be with me? Anyways, let's see what's next. Oh, this next game looks like it's the last one. What? Already? In fact, that was a lot more than I expected. You're right.
So the last game is Dragon Ball GT Transformation. It's the next Legacy of Goku game and it goes through the GT story until the Baby Saga. Even though this is a Legacy of Goku game, it plays nothing like that series. It's a beat 'em up.
So the last two GBA games were beat 'em ups. Yup, but it's whatever. It's not as good as the other games, but maybe it is a good game. I'm gonna just say this since I'm kinda getting tired of going over all these games. He just outright said it.
But I think the other Legacy of Goku games were better, or at least they look better. The music is whatever, the gameplay is pretty basic, and a lot of the elements from the last games are missing. I wonder why. But that does it for all the Game Boy Dragon Ball games.
Hey, that's not right. I looked at the wiki and it looks like you missed one. Oh, you're talking about that, huh? Well, it's not really a Dragon Ball game, but it does have Dragon Ball in it.
In 1993, a game came out for the original Game Boy in Japan. It's called Cult Jump and it's a quiz game. And that's as far as I'm going because this is a Dragon Ball video, not a Jump one.
Way to kill the mood. What mood? I don't know. Alright, I think all this info has fried your brain, so I'm just gonna say this. These are some pretty cool games and I don't mind checking some of them out. Me too. Yeah, you too. Wait, what?